I saw messages on my husband's phone designing my death to pass as an accident. She liked to believe her life was ordinary in the best way. Ordinary meant safe. Ordinary meant predictable mornings, shared meals, and small routines that held the days together like quiet stitches. She woke up before the alarm most mornings, listened to the ceiling fan turn, and thought about the list she kept in her head. Groceries, laundry, a message she meant to send, a bill due at the end of the week. These thoughts felt like proof that life was steady. She did not need much happiness. She needed things to keep moving without breaking. Hit that subscribe button and tap the bell icon so you never miss our latest uploads. Her husband slept beside her, usually on his back, one arm flung out, the other tucked under a pillow. Sometimes she watched him breathe and felt a soft comfort in the sound. They had been married long enough for silence to feel normal. The early years had been louder, full of plans and jokes and dreams spoken out loud. Now they shared fewer words, but she told herself that was what a long marriage looked like. People settled. Love changed shape. It became quiet and practical. In the kitchen, she made coffee the same way every morning. The mug she used had a small chip on the rim. She had meant to replace it, but it still worked, and there was something honest about keeping it. When he came in, he usually nodded instead of saying good morning. Sometimes he checked his phone before even looking at her. She noticed, but she did not make it into a problem. Work was stressful. Everyone lives inside their phones now. It was easier to accept these reasons than to ask questions that might lead nowhere. They talked about normal things. What to cook for dinner. Whether the car needed servicing. A friend's birthday is coming up. Their conversations were polite and short, like messages written on sticky notes. She missed longer talks, but she told herself that wanting more did not mean something was wrong. Wanting more was just being human. On weekends, they went grocery shopping together. They pushed the cart side by side, choosing the same brands they always chose. Sometimes he walked ahead, scrolling on his phone, and she followed, reading labels and comparing prices. It felt strange to walk behind her own husband, but she laughed it off in her mind. He was just distracted. She had her own moments like that too. At home, evenings passed in a blur of small tasks. She cooked. He watched television or sat with his laptop. They ate on the couch, plates balanced on their knees. She asked about his day, and he answered with one or two words. She filled the silence with stories from her own day, even when nothing special had happened. Talking made the time feel real. Sometimes she noticed him step outside to take a call. He kept his voice low. When she asked who it was, he said it was work. She believed him because believing was easier. She had always believed him. Trust was something she had given early, without counting the cost. At night, when the house was quiet, small thoughts crept in. They were not loud enough to scare her, just gentle taps at the door of her mind. Why did he lock his phone now when he never used to? Why did he seem irritated when she touched his arm? Why did he come home later than usual without a clear reason? Each thought arrived, paused, and then left, pushed away by her need to keep things calm. She told herself that stress made people distant. That adulthood was heavy. That marriages went through phases like weather. Some seasons were warm, others cold, but winter always passed. She held on to that idea tightly. Her friends sometimes asked how things were at home. She smiled and said they were fine. Fine was a useful word. It closed doors gently. It kept people from looking too closely. She did not want advice. She did not want sympathy. She wanted her normal life to stay normal. There were moments, though, when the cracks showed themselves without asking permission. One evening, she reached for his phone to check the time, and he snapped at her, sharp and sudden. The sound of his voice surprised them both. He apologized quickly, but the air felt different afterward. She laughed it off, saying she startled him. He nodded, relieved, and went back to his screen. Another time, she noticed he had changed his passwords. The shared computer no longer opened his email. She felt a small sting, like a paper cut. She reminded herself that privacy was healthy. People were allowed to have parts of their lives that belonged only to them. When she lay awake at night, staring at the dark, she tried to remember when things had shifted. There was no clear moment. No big fight. No clear line where the past ended and the present began. It was more like erosion, slow and quiet, wearing away something solid until it became fragile. She still believed in him. Belief was a habit she had practiced for years. It shaped the way she saw the world. When he forgot an anniversary, she forgave him before he even asked. When he missed dinner plans, she saved his portion and ate alone. When he seemed distant, she tried harder to be kind. Her kindness became a routine too. She folded his clothes the way he liked. She remembered his favorite meals. She adjusted her schedule to match his. She told herself this was love. Love meant effort. Love meant patience. There were good days, and she held on to them tightly. Days when he smiled at her across the table. Days when they laughed at the same joke. Days when he reached for her hand while walking. These moments felt like proof that everything was okay. They erased doubts, at least for a while. But the nights were changing. He slept closer to the edge of the bed now. Sometimes he turned away when she reached for him. She told herself people needed space. She told herself not to be needy. She told herself stories until they sounded like truth. Once, she found a receipt in his pocket for something he had not mentioned. It was small and harmless, but it made her pause. When she asked about it, he brushed it off with a quick explanation that did not quite fit. She nodded anyway. Questioning felt like opening a door she was not ready to walk through. Her days stayed busy. Work, chores, small plans. Staying busy helped keep her thoughts in order. When she slowed down, the questions came back. She wondered if she was imagining things. She wondered if she was being unfair. She wondered if this was just what adulthood looked like when the excitement faded. She did not talk about these thoughts. Not to friends. Not to family. Not even to herself in a clear way. She kept them folded and tucked away, like letters she was not ready to read. Her husband changed his habits in small ways. He dressed better when going out alone. He seemed distracted during conversations. He smiled at messages she could not see. She noticed all of it, but she connected none of it. Each detail stood alone, harmless on its own. There was comfort in denial, even if she did not call it that. Denial let her wake up each day and follow her routine. It let her believe she was safe inside her life. It let her plan for the future without fear. Sometimes she imagined how their life would look in 5 years. A bigger home, maybe. More stability. She pictured shared holidays and calm evenings. These images felt real enough to touch. She trusted them more than her doubts. One evening, during dinner, he barely spoke. His phone buzzed again and again. She tried to joke about it, asking if he was that popular. He smiled without humor and said work was busy. She nodded and changed the subject. After dinner, she washed the dishes while he stepped outside again. She watched his shadow through the window. His voice was low, his body tense. She felt a strange heaviness in her chest. It passed when he came back inside and asked if she wanted tea. That was how it always worked. A moment of discomfort followed by a return to normal. She trained herself to focus on the normal. Normal was warm. Normal was familiar. Normal did not ask hard questions. She told herself that if something was truly wrong, she would feel it clearly. She would know. The fact that she did not know for sure became proof that there was nothing to know. As she lay in bed that night, listening to the house settle, she felt both close to him and very far away. She reached for his hand. He held it for a moment, then let go as he turned in his sleep. She stared at the ceiling and told herself tomorrow would be better. The cracks were there, thin and quiet, running through the surface of her life. She did not see them as danger. She saw them as signs of wear, normal marks left by time. She believed she could live with them. She closed her eyes and rested in that belief, unaware that what she called small cracks were slowly becoming something deeper, something that would one day demand to be seen. She picked up his phone without thinking much about it. It was lying on the kitchen counter, screen dark, placed face down like he always did now. Her own phone was in the bedroom, charging. She only wanted to check the time. The kettle was already making that soft sound that meant the water was almost ready. It was one of those normal moments that never feel important until later, when everything changes. The screen lit up as soon as she touched it. She hesitated for a second, feeling a small sense of guilt, even though she had used his phone many times before in the past. There had been a time when phones were just tools, not secrets. She told herself she would only glance at the clock and put it back where it was. Before she could lock the screen, a notification slid down from the top. It wasn't loud. It wasn't dramatic. Just a message preview, short and casual, like any other. But the words were wrong. They didn't fit into her world. They didn't make sense in the life she believed she was living. Her eyes moved over the sentence once. Then again. Her mind refused to understand it. It felt like reading a foreign language she almost recognized but couldn't fully translate. She told herself she was tired. That she was misreading it. That her brain was filling in gaps that weren't really there. She locked the phone quickly, her heart beating faster for reasons she could not explain yet. The kettle clicked off. The kitchen felt too quiet. She stood there, staring at the counter, trying to breathe normally. A voice inside her said to stop, to put the phone down, to walk away and forget what she thought she saw. That voice was loud and desperate. It sounded like fear dressed up as reason. Another voice, smaller but stronger, told her to unlock the phone again. Her fingers felt stiff as she picked it up. She told herself she was only checking to clear her confusion. She needed to prove to herself that her mind was playing tricks on her. She entered the code. She knew it. He hadn't changed that yet. The message thread opened easily, like a door that had never been locked. Her eyes scanned the screen slowly, carefully, as if moving too fast might break something. The words were still there. More of them now. More lines. More meaning. Her breath caught in her chest. The messages were calm. That was the worst part. They were written in an easy, almost careless way. There was no anger in them. No jokes either. Just quiet planning. Cold, clear sentences about things that should never be planned. She read one line and shook her head. No. That couldn't be right. She scrolled a little, then stopped. Her hands were shaking now. The phone felt heavier than it should have, like it was made of stone instead of metal. She read the messages again, slower this time, forcing herself to understand each word. They talked about timing. About making things look natural. About making sure no one would ask questions. The words, accident, appeared more than once. Her name appeared too. Her body reacted before her mind did. Her ears rang. Her mouth went dry. Her stomach tightened in a hard, painful knot. She felt like the floor had shifted slightly, just enough to throw her balance off. This wasn't possible. It didn't fit into her life. It didn't fit into the man she slept next to every night. It didn't fit into shared dinners and small smiles and quiet routines. It didn't fit into anything she knew. She scrolled back up, hoping to find something that would explain it all away. A joke taken too far. A misunderstanding. A message meant for someone else. Anything. But the more she read, the clearer it became. These were not random words. They were not careless thoughts typed in anger. They were steps. Ideas. Conversations that had continued over time. Her mind fought back hard. This has to be fake, she thought. Someone must be pretending. Maybe his phone was hacked. Maybe she was misunderstanding the tone. Maybe this was about something else entirely. She locked the phone again and pressed it against her chest, as if holding it close might make the truth disappear. Her breathing was shallow now. Each breath felt like work. She leaned against the counter, closing her eyes. Images rushed into her head, uninvited. Him kissing her goodbye in the morning. Him asking if she wanted tea. Him reaching for her hand during a walk. These memories clashed violently with the words she had just read. Her brain tried to protect her by slowing everything down. The room felt distant. Sounds seemed far away. She felt like she was watching herself from the outside, standing in a kitchen that no longer felt like her own. She opened her eyes again and unlocked the phone once more. She hated herself for looking, but she needed to know. Not knowing was no longer an option. She scrolled further. The conversation went back weeks. Maybe longer. She didn't know how she had missed this part of his life. The messages talked about being careful. About waiting for the right moment. About how things would work out afterward. Her chest hurt now, a deep, heavy pain that spread into her shoulders and neck. Her hands felt cold. She noticed small details in a strange way, like how quiet the refrigerator was, or how the light above the sink flickered slightly. She wanted to scream. She wanted to throw the phone across the room. She wanted to wake up from this moment and find it gone. But she did none of those things. Instead, she stood there, reading, letting the truth sink into her body piece by piece. Denial didn't leave all at once. It argued with her. It whispered that she was overreacting. That she should wait and talk to him. That there had to be an explanation. Denial reminded her of all the times she had trusted him and been right to do so. But fear had entered the room now, and fear was stronger. She thought about how ordinary the day had started. About how she had worried more about what to make for dinner than about her own safety. The thought made her feel sick. Her mind jumped ahead without asking permission. She thought about accidents she had heard about. Stories in the news. Things people said could happen to anyone. For the first time, those stories felt close. Too close. She locked the phone and placed it back on the counter exactly where she had found it. Her hands moved carefully, as if any sudden motion might shatter the fragile moment holding her together. She checked the time on the microwave instead. It felt important not to look suspicious, even though no one was watching her. That thought alone scared her. Why was she already thinking about acting normal? Her husband was due home soon. The idea of hearing his key in the door made her heart race. She tried to calm herself, telling herself she needed to think clearly. Panic would not help her. She needed her mind, even if it felt like it was slipping away from her. She went into the bathroom and splashed cold water on her face. She looked at her reflection in the mirror and barely recognized the woman staring back. Her eyes looked wider, older, afraid. She whispered to herself that this could not be real. Saying it out loud felt like holding onto a thin rope over a deep drop. But even as she said it, the words from the phone echoed in her head. She thought about confronting him right away. The idea felt both tempting and terrifying. What would she say? What would he say? Would he lie? Would he get angry? Would he realize she knew? Her thoughts raced in circles, never landing anywhere safe. Every option felt dangerous. Every choice felt heavy. She returned to the kitchen and cleaned a spot on the counter that was already clean. Her hands needed something to do. Stillness made the fear louder. Part of her wanted to believe that reading those messages was the worst thing that could happen, that now that she knew, she could protect herself. Another part of her understood something deeper and darker. Knowing changed everything. Knowing meant the world was no longer safe in the way it had been that morning. When she heard his footsteps outside, her body reacted instantly. Her muscles tightened. Her heart pounded. She forced herself to breathe slowly, counting each breath the way she had once learned to do during stressful moments. He walked in like always. He greeted her like always. His voice sounded normal. His face looked familiar. That familiarity scared her more than anything else. She smiled back, though it felt unnatural, like moving a face that didn't belong to her anymore. She answered his questions. She listened to his words. All the while, The phone sat silently on the counter, holding a truth that had shattered her life. Inside her, shock battled disbelief. Fear pressed against denial. She felt like she was standing on the edge of something vast and unknown, with no clear way back. That phone, picked up for a simple reason, had changed everything. And even as she moved through the rest of the day, speaking and listening and pretending, she knew one thing with painful clarity. Her life was no longer just her life. It was something fragile now, something she had to protect, even if she didn't yet know how. She did not sleep that night. She lay beside him, staring at the ceiling, listening to his breathing. Every small sound felt loud. Every movement made her tense. When he shifted in his sleep, her heart jumped, even though he did nothing wrong. Morning came quietly, like it always did, but nothing felt the same. When he woke up, she acted normal. That was the first decision she made. Not a loud one, not a brave one, but a careful one. She smiled when he looked at her. She asked if he wanted coffee. Her voice sounded steady, and that scared her. She wondered how she could sound so calm when everything inside her was shaking. He moved around the kitchen, unaware or pretending to be unaware. He checked his phone. He poured coffee. He spoke about small things, as if the world had not changed overnight. She watched him closely now, not like a wife, but like someone trying to understand a stranger. Every little thing felt different. When he stood too close, her body stiffened. When he touched her arm, she felt cold instead of comfort. His smile looked sharper. His silence felt heavier. Things she once ignored now felt dangerous. She noticed how often he looked at his phone. How quickly he locked it. How he stepped away to take calls. Each time, her chest tightened. Each time, her mind went back to those messages. She wondered if he was planning something at that very moment. She kept talking, filling the space with normal words. She asked about his day. She mentioned errands. She talked about dinner plans. Acting normal became her shield. As long as she stayed normal, maybe she stayed safe. Inside, fear followed her everywhere. It sat in her stomach, heavy and sharp. It whispered to her when she washed dishes. It watched her when she walked through the house. Even the rooms felt different now, like they were holding secrets too. She replayed every memory in her mind, searching for signs she had missed. The late nights. The short replies. The distance. Things she once explained away now lined up in a way that made her feel sick. She wondered how long this had been happening. She wondered if she had ever really known him. She thought about confronting him. The idea came back again and again, like a door she kept walking past but never opening. What if he denied it? What if he got angry? What if he realized she knew and decided not to wait anymore? The risk felt too big. So she stayed silent. Silence became her second shield. She listened more than she spoke. She watched his moods carefully. She learned when he was relaxed and when he was tense. She learned when to speak and when to stay quiet. It felt like walking on thin ice in her own home. Every normal action now carried fear. When he offered to drive her somewhere, she made excuses. When he suggested a trip, her heart raced. Even small plans felt dangerous. She started choosing safety without saying the word out loud. She kept her routine exactly the same. Same wake-up time. Same chores. Same habits. Any change felt risky. She didn't want him to sense anything different. She didn't want him to ask questions. At night, she stayed awake longer, pretending to scroll on her phone. She listened for sounds. She noticed how quickly he fell asleep. She noticed how deeply. She told herself to remember everything, just in case memory became important later. Her body reacted before her mind sometimes. Loud noises made her jump. Sudden movements made her heart race. She hated feeling this way, but she couldn't stop it. Fear had moved in quietly and made itself at home. She avoided mirrors when she could. When she did catch her reflection, she barely recognized herself. Her face looked tired. Her eyes looked alert, like they were always searching for danger. She felt older, not by years, but by awareness. She told no one. Not friends. Not family. The secret felt too heavy and too dangerous to share. She didn't know who to trust anymore. If the person closest to her could hide something like this, who else could? Sometimes, when he laughed or acted kind, confusion hit her hard. How could someone plan something so dark and still act so normal? That question followed her everywhere. It scared her more than anger ever could. She began to understand something important, even if she didn't want to admit it. Her life depended on staying calm, on staying quiet, on staying one step ahead without letting him know she was moving at all. Fear, silence, and pretending became her daily routine. She moved through her days carefully, like someone carrying something fragile that could shatter at any moment. She didn't know how long she could live like this. She didn't know what her next step would be. But one thing was clear now, in a way it had never been before. Nothing was normal anymore. And acting normal was the only thing keeping her alive. She waited before doing anything. Fear had taught her patience. She knew rushing would only put her at risk. So she watched, listened, and thought. Each day, she moved carefully, like someone walking through a dark room, counting every step. When she was sure he was asleep one night, she reached for his phone again. Her hands shook, but her mind felt clearer than before. Fear was still there, but it no longer controlled her. She knew what she needed to do. She did not read everything at once. She took her time. She captured screenshots quietly, making sure no sound was turned on. Messages, dates, times. Small details that showed these were not random words. She sent the images to a private email account she had just created, one he didn't know existed. She deleted nothing. She changed nothing. She left the phone exactly the way she found it. After that night, she began collecting information slowly. A few minutes here. A few messages there. She never rushed. She never stayed too long. She knew that acting normal mattered more than anything else. During the day, she used her own phone. She searched carefully, always clearing her history. She read about legal rights, about safety steps, about what to do when someone feels threatened in their own home. Every word made her heart race, but it also gave her something she hadn't felt in days: control. She learned how important proof was. How memory alone was not enough. How dates and messages could speak when she couldn't. That knowledge made her stronger. She also knew she couldn't do this completely alone. There was one person she trusted, someone who had always listened without judging. Reaching out felt risky, but staying silent felt worse. One afternoon, while sitting alone in her car, she sent a simple message. Nothing dramatic. Just enough to open the door. I need to talk. It's important. She didn't explain more through text. She knew better than that. When they finally spoke, she chose her words carefully. She didn't panic. She didn't exaggerate. She shared facts. She shared what she had seen. She shared how afraid she was. On the other end of the line, there was silence. Then concern. Real concern. She felt something loosen inside her chest. For the first time, she knew someone else believed her. They talked about small steps. Safe steps. Places she could go if she needed to leave quickly. Ways to keep information secure. Ways to stay calm and unnoticed. The conversation didn't erase her fear, but it gave it direction. At home, she stayed the same. Same routine. Same tone. Same habits. But inside, something had shifted. She was no longer frozen. She was preparing. She kept a small bag hidden with important things. Documents. Copies. Items she might need in a hurry. She didn't tell herself she would use it. She just told herself it was smart to be ready. Each piece of evidence she saved made her feel steadier. Each quiet plan made her breathe easier. Fear was still there, but it was changing shape. It was no longer panic. It was focus. She stopped blaming herself. She stopped asking how she had missed the signs. Those questions didn't help anymore. What mattered now was the future, not the past. At night, when she lay awake, she no longer felt completely helpless. She still listened to his breathing. She still stayed alert. But beneath all of that was something new. Determination. She didn't know exactly how or when things would change. She didn't know what the final outcome would be. But she knew one thing with quiet certainty. She was no longer just surviving. She was preparing to protect herself. Things did not fall apart all at once. They shifted first, slowly, in ways only someone watching closely would notice. She noticed. The first sign was his mood. He became restless. He checked his phone more often, then suddenly less. He paced the house for no clear reason. He asked questions he had never asked before, small ones that felt harmless on the surface but carried weight underneath. "Have you been using my phone?" he asked one evening, trying to sound casual. She didn't freeze. She didn't rush. She answered the way she had practiced in her head. "Not really." "Why?" He shrugged, but his eyes stayed on her a second too long. "Just asking." That second stayed with her long after he walked away. Small things kept happening. Plans changed without warning. He cancelled outings he had suggested himself. He seemed irritated by noise, by questions, by the smallest interruptions. At night, his sleep grew lighter. He woke more easily. Sometimes she caught him watching her when he thought she wasn't looking. She understood then that something had shifted for him too. Maybe a message hadn't gone as planned. Maybe someone had backed out. Maybe time itself was no longer on his side. Whatever it was, the calm certainty she had seen in those messages was gone. In its place was tension. Fear returned, but it didn't paralyze her this time. It sharpened her. She doubled down on her precautions. She backed up everything again, storing copies in more than one place. She shared key details with the person she trusted, just enough that if anything happened, the truth wouldn't disappear with her. She memorized phone numbers. She rehearsed excuses. She planned routes in her head, ways out that looked ordinary. Nothing dramatic. Nothing that would raise suspicion. At home, she stayed steady. She laughed when she was supposed to. She complained about normal things. She kept her tone light. Acting normal was no longer just a shield, it was strategy. But the tension in the house kept growing. He started asking where she was going, even for short trips. He offered to drive her more often. He insisted on joining errands he used to avoid. Each offer felt like a test. She declined gently, never the same way twice. "I already promised I'd go alone. I just need the quiet. It'll be faster this way." He didn't argue, but his jaw tightened. One night, she noticed something else. His phone was no longer where he usually left it. He kept it on him, even in the shower. He changed how he typed, angling the screen away. The secrecy had turned defensive. She realized he was afraid too. That knowledge was dangerous, but it was also powerful. Fear made people sloppy. Fear made them rush. Fear made them reveal themselves. She didn't push. She waited. An unexpected event did it. A simple one. Someone from his life asked a question they shouldn't have known to ask. Not directly. Not clearly. Just enough to shift the air. After that, he unraveled faster. He snapped more often. He accused her of being distant. He searched her face for reactions that weren't there. Once during dinner he asked, "You're happy, right?" The question felt wrong. Too sudden. Too sharp. She smiled. "Of course." He nodded, but he didn't look convinced. That night, she didn't sleep much. Not from fear this time, but from focus. She knew the window was opening. She knew the truth was pressing outward, looking for space. She made one more quiet move. Not reckless. Not loud. Just be careful. She set up a safeguard that didn't rely on chance. Something that would speak even if she couldn't. After that, she waited. Days passed like stretched wire. Every conversation felt loaded. Every silence felt louder than words. She knew he sensed it slipping away. She could see it in the way he hesitated, the way he watched her leave a room, the way his confidence cracked at the edges. One evening, he tried to steer the conversation back to the future. Plans. Trips. Changes. His voice sounded forced, like someone reading from a script they no longer believed in. She listened. She nodded. She didn't agree to anything. Inside, she felt steady. The plan he had built depended on control, on secrecy, on her not knowing. That foundation was gone. He didn't know exactly why, but he felt it. The certainty that once guided him had turned into doubt, and doubt was unraveling everything. She knew the risk wasn't over. Not yet. But the balance had shifted. For the first time since that day in the kitchen, she felt something close to relief. Not safe. Not peace. But momentum. The truth was no longer buried. It was moving. And no matter how carefully he tried to hold things together, she knew one thing now with absolute clarity. His plan was falling apart. And she was ready for what came next. She knew the moment had come when staying silent felt more dangerous than speaking. The balance she had been holding so carefully could not last forever. Too many pieces were already moving. Too many people knew enough to ask questions. She didn't do anything dramatic. She didn't run. She didn't accuse me. She followed the plan she had built slowly, step by step, with calm hands and a clear mind. The first conversation happened in a quiet room, away from home. She sat across from people whose job was to listen, not judge. Her voice shook at first, but she didn't stop. She placed the evidence on the table, one piece at a time. Screenshots. Dates. Messages. A timeline that spoke for itself. The room grew silent as they read. They didn't interrupt her. They didn't rush her. They asked careful questions, the kind that showed they understood the weight of what she was saying. Each answer she gave felt like setting something heavy down after carrying it for too long. For the first time, she said the words out loud. Not hints. Not half-truths. The full reality. When she finished, the silence returned, but it felt different now. Solid. Seriously. Things moved quickly after that, though it didn't feel quick to her. There were calls made. Steps taken. People involved who had never been part of her life before. She was guided, protected, listened to. The fear that had once filled every corner of her body began to loosen its grip. When others were brought into the truth, the shock was immediate. People who had known him for years struggled to understand. They talked about how kind he seemed, how helpful, how calm. Some shook their heads in disbelief. Others asked if there had been a mistake. She didn't argue. She didn't try to convince anyone with emotion. She let the facts speak. The words he had written. The plans he had discussed. The proof he never thought would surface. As the truth spread, reactions changed. Confusion turned into silence. Silence turned into realization. The image everyone had believed in began to crack, just like her life had once seemed so normal on the surface. When he was confronted, she wasn't in the room. She didn't need to be. She had already faced him in the hardest way possible, by surviving long enough to speak. Later, she learned how different he looked then. Smaller. Less sure. The confidence he once carried had drained away. The careful mask he wore for years could no longer hold. When they asked her to speak again, she did. This time, her voice was steady. She talked about the normal life she thought she had. About the small signs she ignored. About the moment everything changed. She talked about fear, about silence, about pretending when pretending was the only way to stay safe. She didn't cry while she spoke. Not because she felt nothing, but because she had already cried in private, in the dark, when no one could hear. Now, she spoke with clarity. People listened differently this time. Not with doubt. With respect. The betrayal hit hard, even for those who were only hearing it secondhand. To understand that someone could smile, laugh, and share meals while hiding something so dark left many shaken. It forced them to question how well they truly knew anyone. For her, the betrayal felt heavy but clean. Painful, yes, but no longer confusing. The truth had sharp edges, but it was solid. It didn't shift or lie to her. It didn't ask her to pretend. When it was over, when the talking stopped and the doors closed, she sat alone for a moment and let herself breathe. Really breathe. The kind of breath that reaches deep into the chest. She thought about the woman she had been before all this. The one who explained things away. The one who believed silence kept the peace. She felt tenderness for that version of herself, not anger. She had done the best she could with what she knew then. Now she knows more. Speaking the truth didn't erase the past. It didn't undo the fear. But it did something just as important. It took the power out of secrecy and placed it where it belonged. With her. For the first time in a long while, she felt seen. Not as someone fragile or afraid, but as someone strong enough to survive and speak. And as the truth settled into the world, one thing became clear to everyone involved. The story they thought they knew was never the real one. And she was finally free to tell her own. The danger did not disappear overnight, but it no longer controlled her life. The most important thing had already happened. She was safe. She was no longer living under the same roof, no longer waking up with fear sitting on her chest. The place she stayed was quiet, unfamiliar, and comforting in a way she hadn't felt in a long time. The first few days were strange. Her body was free, but her mind was still catching up. She woke suddenly at night, heart racing, listening for sounds that were no longer there. Silence felt different now. It wasn't threatening. It was healing, even if it took time to understand that. Justice moved forward slowly, the way serious things always do. There were meetings, questions, careful steps taken by people trained to handle truth and consequences. She did not rush the process. She had learned the value of patience. This time, patience worked in her favor. When the outcome became clear, she felt many things at once. Relief, sadness, anger, and something else she didn't expect. Peace. Not because everything was fixed, but because the weight of hiding was gone. The truth no longer belonged only to her. It was out in the open, where it could no longer harm her in silence. She allowed herself to grieve. Not just the fear she had lived through, but the life she thought she had. The future she imagined. The trust she gave freely. Grief came in waves, sometimes gentle, sometimes sharp. She didn't fight it. She let it pass through her, knowing it was part of healing. Slowly, she began rebuilding. She made small choices just for herself. What time to wake up? What music to play? What food felt comforting? These choices seemed simple, but they mattered. Each one reminded her that control had returned to her hands. She reached out to people again, carefully at first. Real conversations replaced pretending. Honest laughter returned, quiet but real. She learned that asking for help was not weakness. It was strength she hadn't known she had. There were scars, yes. Some days were harder than others. Certain memories still tightened her chest. Certain places still made her pause. But fear no longer ruled her decisions. Awareness had replaced it. She saw herself differently now. Not as someone who had been fooled, but as someone who survived something unthinkable. Someone who paid attention when it mattered. Someone who protected herself when it counted most. Justice did not erase the past, but it closed a door that needed to be closed. It gave her space to move forward without looking over her shoulder, without waiting for something bad to happen. One day, standing in the sunlight, she realized something simple and powerful. She was free. Not just from danger, but from the version of herself who believed silence was safety. She carried wisdom now, strength earned the hard way, and a future that belonged only to her. Her life did not end with betrayal. It began again, stronger, clearer, and finally her own.